Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kara-Leah and welcome back to Conversations with Kara-Leah. A little bit of a gap there. The last week we had Matthew, which was a huge conversation that has had nearly 2,000 views. If you haven't yet seen it, highly recommend that you watch that. This week I'm talking to Jacqlin Richards. Jacqlin and I have been friends for quite a while. She is a powerhouse of a woman. I love it when I hit the dance floor with her, and I adore the work that she's doing in the world. I've watched her just as a single parent dive in and build her business from the ground up, and she's just going from strength to strength. Jacqlin works as a mentor, she works as a coach, she runs trainings, and she's just clear. She's got energy. So her and I sat down to have a conversation, partly because we are running an event together, but it was more because it was just, we wanted to talk about the thing. And you'll see what the thing is in the conversation coming next.
Jacqlin, welcome. Oh,
great to be here, Kara-Leah. As always, love the conversations with you.
I know, I freaking love you as well. So give people a little bit of an intro on terms of what is lighting you up right now. What's getting you revved up?
Oh God, it's okay. This is an easy question. Create a consciousness. That is what's lighting me up. That is what's blowing my hair back. It's what's bringing aliveness into my world at the moment, because it's not a place that I was orientating from not that long ago, right? And now that I've found my way into living my life in creator consciousness, it's a very, very different ball game.
You know, when I reflect back on, Jacqlin and I used to hang out together in my house in Langholm in Auckland back in like 2018, 2019. And we would get together on Friday mornings, I think it was, and work alongside each other. And when I look at you now, and when I feel like you were awesome back then, you're like this little pint-sized power thing that would rock into my kitchen and light it up. But when I look at you now, I can sense and feel there's been an even bigger shift. So I'm wondering if it's about this creator consciousness. What does that mean to you? What is creator consciousness?
Yeah. And there has been a massive shift, massive shift. And creator consciousness, wow, it's being the predominant creative force in your life, right? It's taking self-responsibility, radical responsibility of how I show up in life, and that I am the determinant of it all, right? I'm creating it, whatever it is. Yeah, the good, bad, the ugly, and the fucking incredible. I am creating it. And that to me was such a revelation, because if I'm creating it, even the shitty bits, if I'm creating those, then I can create something else, right? I can choose to create something else. And what that means to me is that the power comes back to me. It's inside me, right? It's not external from me. I'm not at the mercy of other people's behavior. I'm not at the mercy of the circumstances that life is throwing at me, which has been really fucking useful for the last 2 years, right?
I was about to say that. I'm like, but you didn't create COVID, or you didn't create lockdowns. So when you talk about, creating your life and dealing with that, how does that relate to things like that happen to us, like lockdowns, like COVID?
Yeah. But even that, even saying it like that way, right? That happened to me. It happens to us. It impacts the way that I respond to it, right? If I'm at the mercy of it, it's like life is happening around me, but how am I choosing to respond to it? Yeah. Am I responding creatively, or am I responding from a place of being at the mercy of it, right? Being a victim to it. And if I'm going to talk about the opposite, which, we live in a dualistic world. Yeah. It's part of the reality that we have been born into. Victim consciousness is on the other side of that fucking coin, right? Mm-hmm. Being a victim of this reality. And it's interesting because and I know the question, just circling back around your question, how am I creating this, right? How am I creating this reality that I'm sitting in, which is my perception of it, right? How I'm choosing to view it. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people where COVID, I call it the little C, right? I called it the big C once. And they said, that's cancer, dude. I'm like, oh, shit, sorry. Don't want to stand on anybody's toes, right? So the little C, I know people where it's not even part of their reality, right? It's not even part of their reality. They don't even entertain that part of what's going on in the world, and therefore they're not engaged in it, they're not focusing on it, they're not giving attention to it, and they're not spiraling down in that in amongst all of it, right? Which is kind of challenging for a lot of people when it's so in our face, right? It's so in our face. And I shared this little story in some of my groups the other day, and it's such a good one because it illustrates this so beautifully. My brother works in mental health, and they've all been dropping like flies, right? With getting this virus, getting the little C, as they say, and none of their clients, they call them their clients. He works in residential mental health. None of the clients have had COVID, right? None of them. Yet the staff are dropping like flies, And I'm like, okay, why is that? I'm really, really interested in that, because so much of our focus, so much of our attention, so much of our awareness has been stolen from us, right? Has been taken up by what's been happening in the world over the last couple of years.
It's a huge amount of bandwidth, right? Orientated in that direction of what's happening, what's really going on. Is it really this? Is it really that? Can we trust these people? Can we trust that? Oh my God, this is happening. That is.
Yeah. I'm exhausted just by what you just said, right? It's like, fuck, an enormous amount of energy going into just that.
So if you're orientating from creative consciousness or creator consciousness, then how do you interact or respond to something like COVID? Can you give like a concrete example of your life and how you interacted?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's not like I haven't spiraled down some holes, because I fucking have, I'm not going to lie. And I remember one of my incredible coaches, he actually rang me up and he said, what are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, what are you doing? Because he's tuned in, right? He's very tuned into me. And he notices when my energy takes a deep dive. and he called me on it. He said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I just need to be informed. I just need to be educated, right? I need to know what's going on. He goes, no, you don't. No, you don't. And I'm like, and he's right. He's right. I'd spiraled down some rabbit holes. I'd started engaging. I'd started putting my energy in because I thought I needed to know. Right? I thought I needed to know, and I don't need to know, right? It's like this understanding that I needed to be educated. And it's the same with my mum, love you, mum, who says, but you've got to watch the news, you've got to be educated, you've got to be informed. And it's like, I can take a little taste and sort of see what's going on. But if I deep dive in there, then that's what's taking my attention. That's what's taking my focus. That's what's getting all of my energy. And my body is responding to it. And it's taking my focus away from what I would love to create. It's taking my focus away from my family, from my internal yard, is what I like to call it, and my backyard, right? My immediate family, my friends, my social network, my community. And this is such a big part of orientating and really being very, very conscious and very, very intentional about where our focus goes, right? Where our energy goes, where our attention goes. Because it's really easy to be distracted at the moment, right? Really easy.
There's a few things I want to pick up in what you just said. One, I want to play devil's advocate. I'll come back to that. Two, I love what you said in terms of, so I think there's a phrase or a quote, where attention goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
Right? And of course, we live in the attention economy, where what is being farmed or harvested is our attention. And therefore, if where attention goes, energy goes, it is our energy. And I think a lot of that is happening unconsciously, and people just don't realize that if we look at it from the perspective that our energy is our wealth, right? So where do you want to invest your energy? And what I'm hearing you say is like, I wanted to invest my energy in my family and my friends and my inner world and what I'm creating and what I love to create.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to devil's advocate. Don't you, as a good citizen, need to know what's going on in case you need to take action or do something or be an activist? Because if you don't know what's going on, fuck, society could run away and all of a sudden we could be in concentration camps.
Totally hear you. And it's such a valid question, right? And man, I've been dancing with this question and getting goosebumps while I'm answering it, because this is exactly right. And it comes down to, what is it that is true for me, right? If it's true for me to be a social justice warrior, right? If it's true for me to stand up and take action and be in the fight and, fight the good fight and all of that stuff, then absolutely, man. If that's my truth, if that's my calling, if that's my purpose, then rock on, go hard, right? Mm-hmm. And I've had a number of choices over the last little while with what's been going on over the last little while, of where my purpose lies, right? Where my purpose lies. And I'll put a very concrete example down. The protests that were happening down in Wellington, right? I was so torn. It was like, oh, but I should be down there. And I got feedback from people. You should be down there. Why are you not down there? And I really had to get intentional about that. Okay, what is my truth here? Because yes, I could 100% go down and fight. Yeah, I could go down and I could be there and I could get against the mandates and all the things. And, I'm naming it really, really clearly here. Or my truth, my calling, my purpose in life is to awaken people to create a consciousness, right? Is to awaken people to stand for what they would love to create, not stand against, to stand for. And that is a very different thing. And it's not saying that I wouldn't be good at that. I could totally rock that, man. I could get my fucking sword out and I could be on the front line. And I know that. And I had to be really, really, really clear with myself and really, really honest with myself to not go down there, and to be really clear with myself of what my intentions were if I did go down there. Yeah, which was a lot around being seen as the good person, being seen as worthy, right? All the ego stuff being seen down there, especially when people were putting pressure on me that I should be down there. Yeah, it's like, what I am feeling and what is my honest truth here is to continue with the work that I'm feeling, that I feel called to do in this world. And for me, going down there would have been a major distraction, right? I would have had to cancel my clients, postponed my trainings, which are all about creator consciousness. It's all about creating what we would love in our world rather than fighting against. So, in answer to your question, if your true calling is to be on that front line, then that's where you are, right? Then that's absolutely where you are. But I know that the truth for a lot of people is not that, right? Is not that, but they're getting swept up in the fact that that we are conditioned to believe that that's what we're meant to be doing, right? That we're meant to be engaged in this stuff, and that it's relevant, that we have to make sense of it, that we have to, we have to become embroiled with it. We have to get on board, right? We have to jump on the bandwagon, even when it's not our truth. There's a long drawn out answer for you.
I like that though, because I was considering the same thing. And what I noticed when those protests were going on is that my attention was so focused on what was happening. I was so drawn in, and I was like, and I ended up writing so many articles and then doing a bunch of conversations with Kara-Leah. And part of me was asking the question of like, why is this just mesmerizing me? What's going on here? What's this about? And, I orientate to creative consciousness, or to creative consciousness, quite strongly. And one of the reasons that you and I are having this conversation, or one, is because we vibed on it and we were like, oh my God, yes, this needs to be out in the world. We need to talk about this. And because, we're doing an event together in September, which we'll tell you about later. But I just had that question coming up for myself as well. I was like, man, they're down there and they're fighting against a thing. But when you fight against a thing, you actually give energy to the thing. So if you're giving energy to the thing and you're not actually supporting the thing, and then if you're feeling a sense of power or purpose arising because you're fighting against something, you need the something to keep happening so that you can have a sense of power and purpose.
Totally.
right?
Yeah,
And so there's an exacerbation of it. And I'm like, but if you just disengage and go, okay, you do your thing over there, I'm going to go create this. We're going to have this over here, and we're However, one thing that I thought was really interesting about the protest in Wellington that I feel like was one of the reasons why I was drawn there is that I had a sense that there was the fighting against, but there was always also that creative consciousness happening down there from the perspective of the way the village was set up and the way that it flowed and unfolded, and the experience that many people I've spoken to had in the village, you know?
Yeah.
And so when you speak about, for some people, it's absolutely their dharma to be down there doing that thing. That's when I'm like, so it's not what we're doing that defines whether we're in, if we make it binary, for whether we're in creator consciousness or victim consciousness. It's not what we're doing. It's more where we're moving from and how we're perceiving what's unfolding.
Yeah, totally. Where we're coming from. And, you know, when there's awareness around that, and that's like, you know, man, like the law of attraction, right? Just bringing in an example that most people are aware of. They've heard of it. It's like all the affirmations, right? I'm attracting in abundance, all of that stuff, right? But if we're not aware of what's under the surface, if we're not aware of where we're actually coming from and what we're actually unconsciously feeding and fueling and giving power to and giving energy to, which is exactly the piece you just spoke to, it's like that's the piece that has the power, right? And it continues to have the power. And that's why I see a lot of the law of attraction, you know, way of being in the world and trying to attract and trying to manifest falling over, right? Because there's no awareness around where we're coming from. And it's like, man, you know, and you're absolutely right. There was some incredible stuff going on down there in terms of that desire to bring love and to bring vision and to bring all of that juicy creative stuff, right? Creative consciousness. And you know, and what my feeling around that was, but God, imagine if it wasn't happening on the steps of Parliament. Imagine if all of that was just picked up and put on a field somewhere, right? And without having to be against anything, and just purely being that. This is what we're standing for. This is what we're wanting to create. I mean, I was blown away. They were doing freaking planters on the banks, right? I was just like, my God, there's so much power in humanity, right? In terms of what the potential of what we can create when we are aware of where we're coming from, so that we have these two aspects in our consciousness really clearly identified, because then we can pick up our focus and put it over there, right? Without thinking and believing that we're focused on the vision and what we would love to create and what we want and what we, you know, absolutely wish was happening and desire and all of that, yet we're unconsciously feeding the other side, you know, without even realizing it, you know.
So when you speak into that, you know, like the way the planters are being created and the different things, etc., and what if that was all just in a field, and you know, it's like literally generating a self-sustaining village that's spontaneously arising, that's orientated to love and compassion or whatever. And what I feel in that, I'm like, yeah, but there needs to, like, people were activated or they were engaged by what was happening down at Parliament, and it pulled them out of their ordinary life. Like, there was a disruption where people were willing to cancel their work or cancel this or cancel that and do what they needed to do in order to get down there, because it felt really, really important. Because this is interesting. I think for some people it felt there was a survival aspect here, that the fight, flight or freeze was triggered in a sense of we need to fight back because otherwise all this awful thing's going to happen, right? Yeah. So then what I wonder is, what would it take to generate that same kind of activation or disruption that would pull people out of their regular lives and bring their attention and their energy to create something freaking amazing? You see? It's like that, you know, I look at it, it's like, what was it about the protest that pulled the people in to do the thing? And how do we have a pulling in that's not related to fighting against as such?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and I mean, what I'm getting as you're asking that is, you know, how do we invite people to see themselves as powerful, right, rather than seeing themselves as victims? Yeah, because victims need to fight, right? They need to fight back. They need to stand. They need to fight. They need to because there's a sense of powerlessness there. Because a lot of the, and I can only speak from my own experience. I can only speak for the people that I spoke to directly, but the people that I spoke to who were being called down there, it was always in response to something that was happening that triggered that victim, right? That triggered that fight, that, the day 3 of when when everything went gnarly, right? Oh, I've got to get down there. Yeah. And that was the pull, right? That was the activation. So, in terms of what you're asking here, it's like, man, imagine inviting people and empowering them to see themselves as powerful, right? To see themselves as creators, where there's no victim mentality of having to fight. There's an inherent sense of, I'm fucking powerful, right? I am a creator. That is a very different thing, a very different thing. And when I got a sense of that, my wholeness, my completeness, the fact that I'm not broken, the fact that I don't need to be fixed, I don't need to be resolved, I don't need to fight anymore. Right? I don't need to fight anymore. That is a hugely different orientation, hugely different question, and a hugely different way of speaking, and inviting people into, because it's not about keeping people safe anymore. It's not about protecting people. It's about helping them see themselves as powerful. Yeah. And that is it's a very different way of interacting with people, and a very different way of interacting with myself. Yeah.
Let's just back up a little, because I want to talk about the word victim consciousness, victim mentality.
Yep.
And just really ensure that there's no sense of shaming or making it wrong or making it bad as such. So my understanding is that, there's a legal or a technical definition for victim. Like if I go out in the street and I get hit by a car, I am a victim of a car accident, right? And it's just what happened. And that's the thing. If I get assaulted, I'm a victim of an assault. Now, there's another way that the word is used, right? Of victim. Yeah, there's another way that it's used, and that's what I want to define, is those two different ways. Because do you see what I'm pointing at?
Yep, I totally do. And I really like the way, and I'm really pleased that you brought in that kind of sort of practical definition of it, for want of a better way of describing it, because this is really valid, right? Because feeling like a victim and when I first realized that I'd lived almost 40 years of my life as a victim, right? I never actually defined myself as a victim, because I didn't fucking know I was, right? I didn't know I was in that place. Because the way that I am inclined to sort of answer this, what you're asking here, is that being a victim is being at the mercy of the circumstances that are around me, right? Being at the mercy of my own beliefs, my own perception, being at the mercy of other people's behavior, and the world itself, right? What the circumstances that are going on around me, feeling powerless, about all of that stuff. I can't change. I remember I've heard people say, oh, well, that's the way I am, right? That's the way I am. I can't change.
Yeah.
And for me, this is what victim consciousness is. Because even if I do get hit by a car, how do I respond to that, right? Do I define myself and identify myself as a victim of that car accident for the rest of my life? Yeah. Do I define myself and identify with whatever else has happened to me? And this is a really good lead-in for the word trauma, right? Because I know you and I have had a conversation around this before, but the word trauma for me is such an identification, and it's such an anchor for me. That's the way I've experienced it. It's like, fuck, man, it's in me. It's like an anchor, and it's weighing me down, and it becomes such an identification that I am my trauma, and my trauma is me, and I'm never going to get away from it, right? It's just going to continue to play out. And I've started using a very different way of languaging it, because language is so important, right? The way that we define things, the way that we speak about things, language is energy. You know, I hear people saying that's why they call it spelling, because it spells, you know, all of that stuff. And I call it stuff that happened. Yeah, some stuff happened to me, you know, in my childhood. And, you know, I've had a whole lot of stuff that's happened to me in my childhood. And my brother he used to make a bit of a joke about it, saying, "Oh yeah, I could play my victim card for the rest of my life, you know, just keep getting it out of my wallet, or I could just tuck it away and, you know, just leave it there." And I, you know, I absolutely hear what you're saying about victim shaming, and, you know, we don't want to go into that place, because I have absolute compassion for the person that I was. Right, who was just completely at the mercy of my circumstances, completely at the mercy of the consciousness that I was born into, you know, being raised by a single mom, you know, not having a lot of money, totally in survival, you know, living my life from that place and not knowing any other way, you know, not knowing any other way. So yeah, there's so much in there, you know, in terms of, but I know where you're heading.
Yeah. I want to give a concrete example from my own life, which might be beneficial on this conversation. So when I was 16, I started getting sciatic pain down my leg and went and had an MRI scan, and they said my disc had collapsed, and I got booked in for a spinal fusion. So I had a spinal fusion when I was 16. And then after that, about 3 or 4 years later, I started to get sciatic pain down my other leg, right? And with that pain, I felt like a victim. And what I noticed is I use that pain as leverage to control my circumstances. So, for example, I hung out with a lot of people that snowboarded, and I was so scared of going snowboarding, but I would be like, oh, I can't snowboard because of my back. I can't do this because of my back. And it was a way that I used to navigate life.
Yeah.
And that went on and for probably about a good 8 years. And then when I was 25, I was walking with a limp. I was in so much agony. Oh my God, so much pain. And I went back to the doctors. This was in Canada, had some more x-rays, etc. And they were like, you've got degenerative disc disease. You're going to need another operation. You might be, I was 25. You might be in a wheelchair by the time you're 30. And I just went, fuck that shit. I'm going to heal my back. And I remember that moment. I'd literally been out partying that night, and I came home from the bar, and I was at home, and I was just like, no, I'm going to heal my back. And because I felt like the doctors were meant to know what to do. The doctors were meant to heal me. They were the experts and the authorities. And I felt like when I'd go see them that they fucking didn't know anything, you know? And so that was the moment when I took responsibility, radical responsibility for my back issues. And that was when I started getting into yoga regularly. And, you know, fast forward now, and I have the healthiest spine. Like, I've had it sussed out. Someone's like, oh my God, your spine is like as healthy as an 8-year-old. And so for me, that really shows the shift where I felt like I was powerless, that I was the one who didn't know because the doctors were the ones that were meant to know, etc. And then it got to that point where I know what inspired it, I'm not sure, but it was just like, fuck that. I don't want that. I'm going to do whatever it takes. Yeah. Regardless, I'm taking responsibility.
Yep. Love it. And you know, and to offer a little bit more in terms of the piece that we just spoke about, it's like we're conditioned from the moment that we're born to give our power away, right? To see others outside of ourselves as more powerful. And I absolutely know, I mean, I've had a similar experience in terms of my own health, where my early years as an architect, which was my former career, you know, I got RSI, which meant I had shooting pains, you know, from my wrists, from computer use, and it migrated to my neck and my shoulders, and I was just a mess, man. And, you know, I was on nerve relaxants, and I was 20, no, I was a little bit older than that. About 25, you know, in my 20s. I was in my early 20s. And I was having a breakdown, you know, within a first year of my architecture career. And the doctors told me that I would have permanent nerve damage down both of my wrists. Yeah. And I was so attached to that pain. I was so attached to it. Yeah. I was it. my pain was me and I was my pain. And I used it. Yeah. Just like you were saying that you used it. Right. And I had such an emotional link to it. And when I started finally taking back my power and taking back my responsibility, because I was just like, fuck this, I do not want to live my life this way. And, the only one that's going to change this is me. And so, I took back my power in this situation and many more after that, where I started working with a practitioner. And, and there's so much stuff came up where I don't want to let go of this link, because this is who I am. Who am I without this pain? Who am I? I don't fucking know who I am, because it'd become my normal. Yeah. It had become my normal. And I was terrified of who I might be without it, and that was a huge, huge piece, a huge piece. And I think it's a really valid part of this. And there's a big part of my book, which is just about finished, on exactly this piece. How do we reframe pain and trauma to stuff that happened, right? To stuff that's happened in our past, to stuff that we can actually separate ourselves from. Yeah, man, that happened and it's over there. Yeah,
it's not me.
There.
It's not who
it's
I
not
am.
Me. It's not who I am. Exactly. And that's powerful. That is really powerful. Yeah.
I think what you touched on there, in fact, in terms of when we're growing up, we're conditioned to place power outside of us. And as children, to a huge degree, the power is in the people outside of us, right? It's in our parents, in our caregivers, in our teacher. Everyone's got authority over the child, right? And so then there's the growing up process. So I see like this arc of what does it take? And, it'd be wonderful if the parents supported the children into creative consciousness and into a place of power, right? I'm sure you'll be able to speak to that in a moment. But if there's this arc where at some point in our lives we choose, we get that sense of like, it's almost like an ignorance. Like I was ignorant until I wasn't. It was like that moment of like, fuck this shit, I'm going that way. Right. And then that's when things started to change, because all of a sudden I took on creator consciousness with regards to my spine. And then it started to come into all the things, so for those of you watching this, if you've got a sense of like that powerlessness, of feeling powerless, feeling helpless, and then attempting to manage, manipulate, or control what's outside of you in order to have a sense of power so you can get what you want, it's to recognize that that might be where you are now, but there's a shift, right? There's a shift. So there's an art we all go through. I think, like you say, we all go through feeling as if we're powerless and helpless in the face of the apparent external reality. Right? So I know, so you said something changed for you in the last little while. So was there a turning point where you really went, fuck, I've been in victim consciousness and now I'm stepping into creator consciousness?
Yeah.
Was there a moment or was it a series of moments?
Yeah, it was a series of moments, really. But and interestingly, it's gonna come back to what you just said about parenting, right? Because it was when I became a parent. Yeah, that was when I was at the bottom of the fucking hole. Yeah, it's like, and for a lot of people, for most of the people that I see, to have a really big shift like this, you got to be at the bottom of the fucking hole, right? There's nowhere else to go. I can't keep living like this. And there literally was nowhere else to go but up. And interestingly, it was to do with my parenting, because although a lot of the work that I do out in the world is with parents, because I'm really passionate about exactly what you just said then, we end up with this power dynamic that starts when we're kids, right? Because our parents didn't see us as powerful. Yeah. And, and I'll be really honest, when I first became a parent and up until not that many years ago, I didn't see my children as powerful. I didn't see them as incredible, powerful little beings that I know they are. And one of the biggest ways that I work with parents now is to help them see themselves and each other as powerful, right? An evolution in parenting where parents and children see themselves and each other as powerful, because I know that my children have so much to teach me. Yeah, because they are in this world, whereas I'm in this world with a whole history, right, of stuff that I'm dragging through with me, my beliefs, my perceptions, my definitions. So there's so much in there about power dynamic that as soon as the word power dynamic even comes into play, there's a victim, right? Because there's a dynamic. It's right. If we are
can't you have two powerful people in a dynamic together, though?
Well, yeah, but then I guess it's a different dynamic. Maybe it's a powerful dynamic, or it's a creator consciousness dynamic. And this goes back into languaging, right? As soon as I hear the words, and I still have this way of defining it, power dynamic. It's like power over, right? There's somebody somebody has power over the other. Creating dynamics where both are powerful, right? Where the child and the parent are powerful, where they're both learning as much off each other as they're giving, right? For me, it was definitely when I became a parent, and it was like I had to go through the portal, right? The portal. I had to go through the portal of my biggest challenges, of my biggest struggles, or the shit, as I would call it, right? And this is where the alchemy comes into play, because that is where we find our gold, right? That is where we find our gold. And in terms of one of the biggest pieces that I've been sharing with a group of parents that I just recently worked with is that our greatness or our power is through our humanness, right? When we can go through our humanness, when I can put my hand up and say, oh my God, I operated in that victim consciousness for almost 40 years of my life. And it's not like I don't go there anymore, because I am a human, right? I still dip my toes in. Sometimes I fucking dive in and go for a swim and try and pull myself out again and get out. I still do it. But it's like, how fast can I get myself out of there? Yeah. Rather than I don't go there anymore, right? Because that's just denying my humanity. It's denying my humanness. But how fast can I get myself out of there? And what I learned about myself was that when I went into and lovingly saw that, man, that's the way I was operating. I was totally giving my power away. I was totally identifying with all of the stuff in my life that I wish wasn't happening, that I didn't want to be happening, that I wish I could change, that I had to fix, that I had to resolve. All of that stuff was getting my power, was getting my attention, was getting my focus. And when I could see that and give myself love and compassion around that piece, as I would with anybody else that's in that place, because I know it very, very well. And now understanding that moving through that and changing my relationship to it is the key.
That's it, right? It's not about what's happening. It's the way we're relating to what is happening.
Yeah.
But as you were talking, I was feeling into Nelson Mandela. I just read his autobiography. And so if we look at something's happening, and if we're fighting against it, there's a huge amount of energy going into fighting against it. Or something's happening and we look at how to work with it. We look at what we'd love to have happen. We look at, and so Nelson Mandela, oh my God, I mean, I knew a little bit about him, but when I read his autobiography, it was freaking amazing. When he ended up in prison and the way that he operated in prison, he was never in victim consciousness. There was never any sense of like unfairness, or I shouldn't be here, or this sucks, or it was more along the lines of, all right, this is where I am, what's needed, who do I connect with, how do we get more resources here, how do I keep my political connections going? He freaking worked it. And even when he was in prison, he ended up in a cottage, for example, and he was having meetings with all these political leaders while he was in prison.
Yeah.
You see, and he never, I'm guessing, I'm totally extrapolating, my sense is he never felt powerless. He didn't feel helpless. It was just a case of, this is happening. How do I orientate to it? Where do I send my energy so that I can still accomplish my desires, my visions, my aims? And then, of course, you look at what happened, comes out of prison and gets elected president, like, holy moly.
Yeah. And there's a piece that I definitely want to speak to here, because I wouldn't say that he never felt powerless or he never felt helpless. Yeah, because I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
You know, and however, he chose not to give that the power. Right? Chose not to give that the power, because this is the humanness, right? It's like, man, when and people will say to me, how can you get on Facebook Live, and how can you just stand up and talk, and how can you just blah, 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 blah? And I'm like, you know, how do you have the confidence to do that? And it's like, I don't, right? I don't a lot of the time, you know. Sometimes I'm going to say this stuff, and, you know, and I'm going to get slammed, and because I'm talking about victim consciousness and, you know, all of this, the very different framework in so many ways to what's happening out there, to the narrative of the world, right? And it's like, yes, my shit still comes up, and it still tries to get my attention, and it still tries to draw me away. Right? Hey, over here, you need to look at this. You need to look at all your shit that's coming up, you know, your lack of confidence or your fear. And I'm like, yeah. Okay. I see you. Thank you. And I'm focused on this, right? It's like my power is going to what I want to, what I want to create, how I want to show up. Right. So I would say that, you know, in terms of Nelson Mandela, I mean, fuck, you know, in the face of everything that's going on around him, in the face of his own demons or, you know, shit that's coming up, still choosing where to put the power, right? The power is still going into what I want to create rather than getting swallowed up. And there's so many ways that we get swallowed up, right? When it gives us the power, or trying to run away from it so fast, you know, denying that it's even there. You know, if my shit's coming up, my fears are coming up. Oh, no, I've got it. I'm confident. You know, I've got my shit together, and just ignoring all of that stuff. Yeah, I'm giving it power simply by ignoring it, right? Pretending it's not there. And when I say to the incredible people that come and work with me, and that, you know, that I train and coach, it's like, you don't have to delete your beliefs. You don't have to get rid of them. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to resolve them. You just need to be aware of them, know they're there, and change your relationship to them. Right? That's it.
I love it. Awareness and orientation.
And so desire. Much simpler, and it's so much less work. And I love less work, because that sounds fucking hard. And I know, you know, people that have spent thousands of dollars trying to delete their beliefs and eliminate their beliefs, and, you know, and I'm like, man, just got to take the power out of them, right? Yeah, my not worthy belief comes and smacks me in the face all the time, along with my need to be perfect, have it all together, have all the answers. All of that shit comes up and just, you know, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I know you're there. Power, put it into what I love, right? Yeah.
It's like not taking it, for me, it feels like not taking it seriously anymore. Like, it comes up, but so what? It's just what it is. And you know, like you say, where do I want to put my power? Let's wade into potentially a little bit of controversy, because there's a lot in the field right now around power dynamics, and in particular power dynamics between facilitators and participants within the conscious community, and also within relationship stuff, etc. And, you know, some people, there's stuff coming up around, you know, victim blaming, or this idea of, oh, you create your reality. People then think that means, well, then it's my fault, or, you know, there's all kinds of things. So
so much juice.
So when we look at power dynamics, say between participants or facilitators or shit going down, what's your take on it? How do you orientate to it?
Yeah, it's huge.
Within that thing of, you know, talk about victim consciousness, again, I just want to point out that there's a difference between being a victim of something, an assault or an abuse or an accident or whatever, and being in victim consciousness. And there is no shaming of being a victim to anything. Like, that's life. We are victim, stuff happens. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, this is the collective consciousness that we're all in, right? We're all in it. It's not like, well, I'm the only one that's in, you know, it's not like that. You know, we're all part of this, and we're all here to be invited to lift out of it, right? And with what you're saying in terms of this, you know, power dynamics and facilitators and participants, and it's a fascinating thing. And and interestingly, I've been writing this big piece about it, right? I've got this big piece of writing, and I was writing it, and it's a big piece of writing, and it's going to go in my book, and I'm going to share it soon. And then I got sick, right? Then I got sick, and it was like, no, you're not. Oh, you're not going to say that. No, I got sick. So I haven't finished it, which is interesting, right? There's me sabotaging myself in terms of getting this piece of writing out. But a lot of what this piece of writing is about is that, yes, there are going to be people who are going to stand, and speak, and in terms and speak for the people who would see themselves as a victim in a situation, see themselves as in that dynamic of having the power, of having had somebody have power over them. There are going to be people whose calling is that, whose purpose is that.
We need those people, right?
Yeah, I just know for me that it's not my purpose. Yeah, that's not my calling. It's not my truth. My truth is to empower the people out of that dynamic, right? So that they can go into this dynamic of seeing themselves as powerful, no matter what the relationship is. Because if you go into this power over, I mean, there's power dynamic in that old definition of the word everywhere, right? If somebody's bigger than me, they've got a power dynamic. If somebody's more intelligent than me, they've got if somebody's more experienced than me in whatever it is, there's a power dynamic, right? I mean, I could argue this for the rest of my life to find all of the places where I have less power, so that I can prove to myself, that other people have the power over me. I could do that if I chose to. And I choose not to, because I choose to see myself as powerful, and I choose to empower others to see themselves as powerful too. And I definitely haven't been in this place my whole life, for sure. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot in this in terms of being able to take responsibility for my part in what I'm bringing to the equation, to the situation, to the circumstances. What am I bringing that is enabling these circumstances to unfold? What am I bringing? And if I can track it back long enough and far enough, I'll see the cycles, right? I'll see the patterns of behavior. And if I go into my relationships, just for example, I had the same relationship with a different version of the same man, right? 3 long-term relationships. The last one was my husband. Same, different version of the same man, same relationship, the way it played out. And I just went like this the whole time. He needs to change. It's his fault. He's the problem. And I never once went, I'm the common denominator in this fucking story. What am I bringing to this? And I remember reading a good friend's website, and it said, and she actually named that piece, I stopped blaming the man in front of me and owned my shit, right? I owned what I brought into it. And you can only do that if you're willing to look here rather than continuing to blame the world that's out here. And, no shaming, because we're conditioned to blame. From the moment we're born, we're conditioned to put the blame outside of ourselves, to put the focus outside of ourselves, to look outside of ourselves for what, to be told what to do. We can't connect to our own inner knowing and know that we know what's right for us, right? Which is our intuition, our own inner knowing. We have to find the information outside of ourselves. So there was so much in this for me around my own personal ownership of what I'm bringing to the situation. And it's enabled me to be able to hold myself, in relationship, in, going into different spaces and different trainings, because I'm not expecting anybody else to keep me safe. I'm not expecting anybody else to ensure my needs are met. I'm not expecting or unconsciously demanding, because a lot of this is unconscious, right? Anything from anybody outside of myself. I'm bringing that And if I haven't been able to bring that, then I want to learn how to develop that. You know, the internal resource of being able to develop that. And I'm never going to get to that place if I keep blaming outside. Yeah, if I keep expecting other people to take responsibility for their actions, if I'm not taking a responsibility for my own. Yeah.
It feels like a little bit like a slippery slope and a fine line in terms of, you know, if really shitty things have happened for you in a dynamic, in a relationship, and you're going, well, how did I cause this? What's my part of it? What do I need to do? Is that you making it your fault or blaming yourself for shitty things?
Totally, because it either goes one way or the other, eh? I mean, I know for me, I was an outward blamer. I'd be like, fucking nothing's my fault, right? Everything is everybody else's fault, including the world. And there's other people who take it all on, right? All of it's their fault, you know, coming in the other way. And awareness on both of those, you know, on both along that spectrum, so to speak. And it's both, right? It's both. It's like, you know, not wanting to do either, to actually lift outside of that dynamic or above that dynamic altogether, right? Altogether. Because of course, if part of, and there's so much of this in the field, right, in the Me Too movement and all of what's coming up to be seen, right, so that we can all step into our power and really move from that place. And a lot of those first steps are owning our voice and you know and holding others accountable in that respect. If we're not balancing, you know, if it's not happening on both sides, right, where we're looking inward, to see what that, you know, because for me, that is the empowerment. It's never going to be on an expectation of something outside of myself. That may feel better in the moment. It may feel better that, you know, that I've found my voice and that I needed to speak, and I understand that. I totally do. However, my empowerment comes from noticing the way that I'm stepping into situations and the way that the world, you know, the way that I'm orientated to the world and the way that I'm showing up in the world. Because if I want that to change, then the only way that it's going to change, unless I'm still expecting the world to change for me, right? Everybody else to change, the world to change, you know, I mean, I can't get going with my work until this COVID business is complete, right? I can't go out and live until we get back to normal. You know, I've heard that so many times. When we get back to normal, it's like, what the fuck is that?
What does that mean?
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's like my life is on pause.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say here is that there is there's a rollout that happens. A shitty things happens, and the person who is the victim in that situation needs to stand up and speak up and say, this happened, this is how I felt, it was not okay, and hold the person to account. And then what I'm hearing you say is that's the first piece, and it's really important. And the next piece is to look at, well, is there any part of it that's my responsibility? How do I shift and change? Where's my power in this? How do I make sure this doesn't happen again? How do I take responsibility for myself so it doesn't happen again? And that's where the stepping into power comes from. Yeah.
And I mean, it's not, you know, standing up and sharing your voice, and this is the expectation piece, right? If I'm standing up and sharing what happened in terms of a dynamic and interaction with another, if I have any expectation that person needs to change, because then I'll be in my power. When that person changes, I'll be in my power. No, that person can do whatever the fuck they want. If they still want to keep playing those patterns and keep showing up in the world in that way, that's them, right? But that has no relationship to my power.
That's the real powerful piece, right? Isn't it? Because when you're unhooking from the other person and going, you're no longer defining me, you're no longer giving me power, taking away. It's fucking, I'm in my own.
That's what it is. So you know, and I totally get it, Kara-Leah. It's like, man, but I want to hold them to account, and they've got to, and they've got to, see my hurt or whatever it is. Yeah. It's like, as soon as I expect them to change in any way, my power's gone. It's gone. It's like, you know what? You can do whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah. I see you, and I'm not engaging with you in that way anymore.
Yeah. My power is not related to your behavior. Yeah. There's no relationship here. My power is my power. Right. And where that power comes from is seeing my part in it. Right. Because, and this is a piece that I wrote, it's like, if there's an interaction that happens with somebody, someone's behavior, and there's this power over feeling, and you get them you hold them to account, and, that they say they're going to change their behavior and all of that stuff. And then you have another interaction or go into another training, and the same thing happens again. Yeah. Because this hasn't been looked at. What was I doing? Yes, I've said my piece. They said they're going to change, but what have I brought into that situation, right? What's my part in it? Because otherwise it's just going to repeat. Yeah. And then you need to hold that person to account. They need to change their behavior. And then the next one and the next one, right? And this is my relationship history is exactly this. Right? That partner needed to change. That partner needed to change. It's me that needs to change. Yeah, because that's my power. Yeah, I'm in my power if I'm focused on my own internal yard, rather than trying to change the world around me.
Yeah. Which, leaping back into creator consciousness. So what I noticed from having a vision and going, this is what I'd love to create, is that genuinely it requires me to become the person capable of doing the thing. So when I focus on the creator aspect, I find that I will naturally have to shift and change in some way. But it's not like working on myself. It's not like fixing, healing, resolving. It's just like, it's like stepping up. It's like if I say, right, I'm going to run a marathon. So I'm creating this thing where I run a marathon. Well, to do that, I'm going to have to train. And I'm going to get musclier and I'm going to get fitter, you see. Yeah. So when you look at creator consciousness, and creating visions and all of that, let me think how I want to frame this. There's so much shit going on in the world right now, it appears, in terms of climate change and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And people do feel powerless. People feel completely helpless to do something. And they feel like, as my sense is, that it's the politicians' jobs, it's everybody else's job to figure it out, right? In the face of that, what would you say? How would you respond from creator consciousness?
So say that again. So
if you look at the world, right, it's like there's all this stuff apparently going on with climate change and the war in Ukraine and food shortages and supply issues and increasing disease and increasing famine and increasing floods and fire and blah, blah. Yeah. And it's the politician's job to sort it out, or the corporate's job to sort it out. Blah, blah. What can I do? I'm just one person living in a small town in New Zealand. How do I bring creator consciousness to that?
Okay, this is a good piece. So I did a workshop on this a little while ago, and it was called Staying Focused, right? And that's exactly what it was. And it's like, before the internet came along, right, we were concerned about what was going on in our valley, is the way that I languaged it, right? What was going on in ourselves and our families and our communities, in our valley, right? In our valley. And, we might hear about what's happening in somebody else's valley. They might, news might come across, and, we might have a war with the valley next door, or, and somebody might get married in our valley, and, but we're aware of that. But now we're aware of what's going on in every single fucking valley all over the world. Right. And not only that, which is exhausting, even just saying that, we're conditioned to believe that we have to be engaged with it, that we have to be involved with it, that we have to get on board with it, that we have to put our energy into it, that we have to fix it and resolve it, make sense of it. And we're not wired that way, right? We're not wired. And what it does is it takes our attention and our focus away from here, right? From our own health, from our own well-being, from our own families, from our own friends, from our own work, our own vocation, what we're here to do in the world, our purpose, right? and it drags our energy and focus away. It steals it, which we've spoken to already. And, you know, we spoke about that piece that if it's your truth to go and stand, you know, around what's happening in Russia and Ukraine and for climate change, if that is your truth, then do it. Right? If you're so passionate about it and your heart is so in it and it's so what you love, then do it. Right? Then absolutely do it. If it's not, then leave it to those whose it is. Right? Leave it to those people, because you're only going to be dragging them down if it's not your truth, if it's not where your heart really, really is. Right? The most powerful thing that you can do is to focus on what you love. Right? To focus on what you want to create, what you want to bring to the world, because that's your truth, right? And that's going to have the most gas, so to speak. It's going to have the most energy, because I know that if I just got embroiled and got on the bandwagon of all of these things that I care about, I'm not saying that I don't care about these things, because man, I have a heart just like everybody else in this world. But if I get involved in everything that's not my truth, then I'm never going to get my book written. I'm never going to get these trainings out. I'm, never going to be doing these workshops that are empowering people into their power, right? Which is what this conversation has been about. I'm just going to keep getting dragged away into these other things. So it's getting really clear, on what it is that you love. And this is such a good piece to talk around, because so often we're not clear. We don't know what we want, right? When I ask a client, when I first start working with them, what don't you want? What do you wish wasn't happening? What do you want to change? What do you want to fix? And they'll write a fucking scroll, right? Out the door, down the fucking road, and then I'm like, okay, what would you love? What's your vision? They have no fucking idea, because they've never put energy into it, because it's all going into resolving the scroll, right? And that's where all the energy's going. And to be able to empower people and to give them tools and train them into how to unleash their vision, right? And to get really clear on what it is that they love in life, is a very different thing.
I can feel it.
Very, very different thing. Yeah.
Totally. I can just feel that energy and that power. I'm like, oh my God, what would it be like in Aotearoa if, 50% of the people were focused on creating what they love, and if they felt empowered and resourced and connected and able to do that. If they had the courage to go, this is my dream, this is my vision, and I'm going for it. Yeah.
I mean, how high would the vibration go? Right? If all of the, 50%, we're using 50%, this is our analogy, we're like fueling their desires and their dreams and their visions and their hearts. And how would that impact the planet?
Oh my God, it would be massive. I can feel it. And I reckon, it doesn't have to be, it would probably be closer to 5 to 10%. 5 to 10% of people were living like that, And New Zealand, I think, does have a thread that already orientates in that way for sure. There's a lot of innovators, creatives who do that. And I love the idea of more doing that. Okay, so I'm aware of time. And as I mentioned before, one of the reasons for this conversation, aside from the fact of the passion and the energy that Jill or Jacqlin brings into the party, is because her and I are doing an event, and it is called Orientation to Creation. Because as you might have guessed, both of us operate in the world from that creator consciousness. I hadn't been so explicit around it. I didn't have the frameworks or the languaging, but it was just something that I was innately doing. And then Jacqlin reached out and she's like, you want to do this thing? And I'm like, oh my God, yes. So Jacqlin, I'm going to let you give the spiel, talk about what is Orientation to Creation, this one-day workshop on September 3rd in Auckland.
Cool. So a one-day workshop with us, oh my God, that's just next level powerful shit right there. And what this is about focusing on what you want, not what you don't want, right? Not what you don't. And how powerful that is, Yeah, because when we're fueling, when what we want, what we would love, what we want to create is getting our energy, getting our attention, getting our focus, it compels it to be birthed into fruition, right? Because there's so much juice behind it. And there's a couple of pieces in terms of leading into that. So I'm doing a couple of taster workshops, which are on perception, right? The way that we see the world. Yeah. And we've been born into this victim consciousness, and it's nothing to feel shame about. It's nothing to feel, blame about it, any of that. It's just what it is. Yeah, we simply are born into this space where we're generally at the mercy of the circumstances around us. Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. And the next piece that's leading into the workshop that you and I are doing is on intuition, right? Because being able to lift out of our perception, which is simply a reflection and expression of our past, of our beliefs, of our thoughts and our feelings, which is an expression of our past, to lift out of that is intuition. Right? To be able to go here for information, right? Rather than having to search for it outside of ourselves, being told what to do. And leading into the focus workshop, right? Where is your focus? It's as simple as that. Because if it's here, which, I still get sucked into that as well. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Yeah. And it's so easy to be distracted in the world today. Yeah, that is taking our hearts, it's taking our attention, our focus from what we would love to create into what we need to change, we need to fix, we need to resolve, right? And when we're aware, and this is just rounding this up, going back into that aspects of consciousness, when we're aware that we've got both of these going on without judgment, man, I have a very strong victim, right? I really do. My dysfunctional mode of awareness, my dysfunctional state, my disempowered state, I totally have that. And I have a creator, right? I have an aspect of me that is whole and complete and powerful beyond measure. Right. And when I can hold those two simultaneously, it creates tension, and there's a creative tension there. And we need that to be able to birth these new things into the world. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what this workshop is going to be about. Yeah. So learning where your focus is, because when I learned that my focus wasn't where I thought it was, that it was unconsciously feeding the shit that I wish wasn't happening. Yeah. I was able to clock it, be aware of it, and then pick it up and put it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Game changer.
Absolutely. Such a game changer. And I know we're going to be offering lots of different tools and practices, and really looking at how fear and doubt and all those different things can swing us away from creator, because it's more comfortable to be in victim, where I'm powerless and helpless. And then it's like, no, I'm going to do the thing. Oh my God. But, like I'm looking at writing another screenplay, and a part of me is just like, oh my God, so much time and energy. And what are the chances of it being made into a movie? And why do I want to do that? Blah, blah, blah. But I'm just like, yeah, but it's fun. I freaking love creating characters and worlds and plots and putting it all together and writing a screenplay. I freaking love it.
Yeah.
And so I have a real deep understanding of the way that we sabotage ourselves, which you mentioned, like why. It's kind of like understanding the things that keep us stuck in the victim mentality and prevent us from wholeheartedly going for what we love. Yeah. So that's what it's going to be all about.
Yeah. Boom.
Yeah. Epic, Jacqlin. I'm so excited to be in an actual same room with you again.
I know.
There'll be a bit of dance that happens over the course of the day.
Yeah, there'll be some movement, and there'll be, this was part of the coming into this conversation. It's got to be fun, right? It's got to be playful, because life is way too serious, and I know that intensity and seriousness used to be my middle name, so we got to bring joy, right? It's a portal. Yeah. It's a portal.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the shit's always been happening on this planet for as long as humans have been here, and the shit will keep happening. The shit happens. It happens. So we might as well dance and delight and play in the midst of it all.
Yeah, and change our relationship to the shit so we can turn it into gold, right?
Totally. I'm like, compost it and grow seeds.
Alchemy. It's all alchemy. Yeah. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the conversation.
That was Jacqlin Richards on Conversations with Kara-Leah. You can see what I mean, right? Total powerhouse, very clear. I really love talking to Jacqlin because I get that sense of her alignment, her integrity, and moving from power, from creator consciousness. So come to our event, September 3rd in Auckland. I'm also running a retreat called The Great Create in August. It's a 5-day women's retreat. You can see all the details down below. And maybe just as homework as such, just reflect on where you are already orientated to creative consciousness or creator consciousness in your life, and where you can bring more of that energy. What are your dreams? What are your visions? What would you love to create in this world?